All right, I can hear myself, so that's pretty good. I know y'all can hear me. Thank you for letting us come. It's been a privilege to be able to be with you. I love being in church with believers, and it's always a privilege to be able to be with folks that love Jesus, and not just love Jesus, love our country. I mean, we're listening to what we've got. You know, all this protest against the flag and against the anthem, all that stuff makes me sick. Amen. I mean, that makes me want to, it makes me want to jerk somebody up. Hey, listen, there's men who have fought and died for this country. If you want to protest, do it some other way. And I don't even want to watch no football game no more, not no NFL anyway. I'm a Clemson fan, so I can't get too far away from that. I can't get too far away from the college football, but that NFL, man, I can't even watch it no more. I'm not watching them guys that take advantage of all that money they making, and they wouldn't do that in China. They wouldn't make all that money in China. It makes me sick. I'll get to going here in a minute, but I don't want to get too far off of course. But listen, I appreciate your focus on the anthem and on our country. We wouldn't have the opportunity to do what we do if it wasn't for our country and for men who have fought to hold this freedom for us. And so I'm so thankful to be able to not just to be a Christian and not just to be one of Christ's servants, but not just to be able to be in church, but be in church in a country that was founded upon God's principles. And I thank God for that. Now listen, what we're doing in America today is we're losing a generation. We're losing a generation, and what we got to do, the church has got to get their head out of the sand and realize, hey, what we're doing is we need to be able to go and reach our next generation who doesn't understand the sacrifices that have been made in this country. A lot of the young folks, even my age, that have come through, and after the Vietnam War, has not been very many conflicts, and they don't understand what it took to get our country to the place it's at. And not just our country, but our churches. So that's exactly what we want to be able to do. My name is Jeff Dobbins. Like Pastor said, my wife's name is Kim. Fruitful Hill Ministries is our ministry out of Calvary Hill Baptist Church in Packlet, South Carolina. Now, nobody knows where Packlet is except for one gentleman here. That's right. We got one in the audience today that knows where Packlet's at. That's a very rarity. I don't know very many people and I didn't know where Packlet was either, and I grew up in South Carolina. It's just a little hole in the road there on the southeast corner of Spartanburg County. Our church is there, and they're doing a great work. Our pastor is Bill Pickle, and like we said, we're starting a boys' home there. And what we want to be able to do is go get these boys and show them Christ. And listen, when Christ comes in, there'll be a change in their life that nothing else can take the place of. And so that's our desire, that's our passion, that's what we want to be able to do, is go and show these boys. We can't do that until we finish the house. We've got a house that's roughed in and dried in, and we need to get that house finished before we can start. I've been pleading with the state to let us start taking some boys. We want to, but they won't let us do it until that house is done. And we may go a different route, I don't know. But to be able to do this thing like we want to be able to do it, we need to finish this house. So be much in prayer and ask God what He might be able to do. First, we need about $45,000. We've raised about 15 or so of that. And so we Lord's providing and He's blessing, but we want to be able to finish that thing. Our goal is to be able to raise enough money this year to be able to finish that house. So be much in prayer for us. We sure would appreciate that. Our ministry is based upon the Bible. Listen, what we did was I felt a prayer, I felt emotion, I felt a feeling that pushed me towards this ministry. And I said, Lord, I'm not going to stand on a feeling, I'm not going to stand on an emotion, but I can stand on that book. And if You'll show me through that book what we should do, then I'll do it. And so then He did that through Psalms 144, verse number 10 and 12. It says, it is He that giveth salvation, that our sons may be as plants grown up in their youth. And so what we want to be able to do is now take these boys and plant them in a fruitful hill. And the name of our ministry comes from Isaiah chapter 5, where it talks about planting a vineyard in a fruitful hill. And so our goal with these boys is to show them Christ, saturate them with the gospel, but not just that, teach them how to live right. You understand what we've done is we've gotten an easy believism of sorts and said, hey, if you'll just do these 5 steps, then you can be saved, and then you can go back and live like you was. Hey, that's not salvation. Hey, that's not Christianity. You know what that is? Hey, that's of the devil. And so what we want to be able to do is not just show them salvation, but let them understand, hey, salvation is just a starting point, man. Salvation is what changes you, but then that gives you the desire to live for Christ. Listen, this young lady that's talking about going into missions, I can count on my hand. We've been at over 200 churches in 2.5 years. And that's not as many as some missionaries, but that's a whole bunch of churches. I can count on my hand how many young people are submitting to the call anymore. Hey, it used to be that you'd have a handful of kids coming out of every church. And of course, not all of them would stick, but a handful of kids that was called to preach. But now, they're not interested in it anymore. We're losing a generation, and that's what we want to be able to do. We want to do it through the preaching of the gospel, through the preaching of this book. Ages will be 10 to 17. I got to hurry, so I'll rush through this. Ages will be 10 to 17. The house can hold 12 boys. I know. I see you looking at me. You got the idea. If you don't pray for me for nothing else, you pray I don't lose my mind with 12 boys in one house. 10 to 17. And age 10 to 17, the real knuckleheads. So, don't turn me off, young men. You know you're a knucklehead. That's right. We'll keep them for 18 months and then send them back home. And listen, the idea is that we want to be able to saturate them with the gospel. But listen, our ministry is not an orphanage. It's not a home. That's a long-term ministry. We want to help families in this country. We want to be able to help families. And how you do that? Well, we want to be able to keep them, saturate them with the gospel, share Christ with them, help them to understand their need, then teach them how to live that thing, and then they got to go back home and live it. I get this a lot. That's not enough time, brother. They need to be in that environment. They need to be in that process. Listen, they need to go through the steps. It's not the steps. It's not the process. Listen, it's not the environment. It's not even my ministry that's changing these boys. Hey, it's Christ and Christ only. And when He comes in, hey, there's a real change that's made. And when they go back into that house, hey, that'll make a difference. Hey, you think about the maniac Gadara. You know what happened with him. Listen, he was changed, clothed in his right mind. And you know what Christ told him to do? Mark chapter 5 and verse number 19 said, "Go home to thy friends and tell them how great things the Lord hath done for thee, and hath had compassion on thee." And so now that man becomes the first missionary to the land of Decapolis. So what did he do? He went back home and told his mama and cousins, brothers, sisters, and everybody else there at the house, what? That man hadn't memorized hundreds of scriptures. You know the story. He just hadn't met Christ, and then Christ turned around and left. That man had not, he had not memorized 4 or 5 books of the first books of the Bible. He didn't know Moses, maybe didn't even know who Moses was. So when Christ said go back home and tell him, what did he have to tell him? What Christ had done for him. And listen, that worked then, it'll work today. Hey, what we want to be able to do now is send those boys. You imagine your son being the maniac of Gadara, and then Christ changing him, and him coming back and sitting at your dining room table. Hey, that's going to make a difference in a home. Right. And that's what we want to be able to do. Now, that helps homes. Homes then will change those around them, and then those homes then are able to come into churches and make a difference. What's churches made out of? Homes and families, that's right. And so now those families come in, strengthen the church. That helps the church. And listen, that's the only way to change this country. It's got to come through us. It's got to come through the church house. It's got to be us who's going to go and make a stand and say, hey, we're tired of this mess. We're tired of you shoving this stuff down our throat. We're tired of you moving in on us. Hey, what we want to do is stand by that book, and we're going to stand today. It don't matter who stands against us. And that's what we want to be able to do. So thank you for letting us come. That's a summary. If you've got any questions, please feel free. We have no secrets. And whatever it is, don't hesitate to ask us today. There's some statistics that will break your heart in two. On our table, on the back of our card, you'll see those. Amazing where our country has come in just a very short period of time. Listen, when I got to hurry, but listen, when I was in high school, it's amazing how just in a short, I know you think that's been a long time. It's been 20 years or so. And in 20 years, You can't even hardly say the word God in school. Now, you can say Allah. You can go in there and talk about Buddha all you want, but when you go in as a teacher and you talk about Christ, hey, they'll kick you out, man. Not to include all the immorality that's rampant with teachers. There's a great need in our young folks today. So but look at our card back there. You'll see some of the statistics. And feel free to ask us any questions. We appreciate that. 1 Samuel chapter 21 is where the message will come from this morning. 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we'll read a little bit there and move on. But I do thank you for your hospitality, wonderful place, wonderful church you have here, and great spirit that moves through this place. So I do appreciate you letting us come. I wanted you to look in 1 Samuel chapter 21, and we're going to read verse 10. I want you to remember this date. We'll come back to it here in just a little bit. But listen, in September 11th, 2004, I began my journey back from Gath. Now, that'll make sense to you in just a little bit. And listen, as I go through the message, you'll start to think, well, what in the world is he talking about? But listen, we'll bring it all back together. And listen, the ministry that God's called us to do is based solely on what He's put us through, my wife and I, over the last 10 or 12 years, 15 years. And so I want you to remember that as we go through this thing. Hey, I'm not just running a rabbit. What we'll do is we'll come back to it here in just a little bit. So remember that date, and I'll remind you of it. I won't forget, I promise. Verse number 10, 1 Samuel chapter 21. It says, and I'm always in the wrong place. Let me get over here. And David arose and fled that day for fear of Saul, and went to Achish, the king of Gath. Now, I thought when I was studying this, why in the world would David go down to Gath of all places? You know who's from Gath, right? Goliath's from Gath. And so now David's picked up and gone down into the enemy's territory, and he's walking right down Main Street, Gath. And I thought, why in the world would he do that? And it says clearly in the same verse, for fear of Saul. Now this man Saul has tried to take his life multiple times. David understands this, and not just that. David now has said, hey, I got to get out of here before he does kill me. And listen, fear is a great motivator. You ever been afraid? Yeah, most of us have. You probably telling a story if you ain't. Listen, now, what David has done is he, out of fear, he's picked up and go down the enemy's territory. And I'll tell you this morning that just because you're afraid don't mean that you should go and do what you think you ought to do. Hey, just because you're afraid don't make it right. Just because God, listen, don't forget God's still in control of that situation. Even though you're afraid, God's still there. He's still there. And listen, a lot of times what's happened is He's allowed that thing to come in there to see how you're going to react. And now David has come out, he's gone down, and he says, hey, out of fear, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out of town. I'm going to get out from under Saul's hand. I'm going to go down to the enemy's territory. And what will happen with you and I is this. Maybe it's fear, maybe it's something else. A lot of times what will happen is through suffering or through some sort of conviction, you'll get under pressure. You'll feel that pressure too. You ever been in the pressure cooker, you'll know it. What will happen is you'll start looking for a way out, just like David did. And what will happen then, the first person that'll knock on your door and give you a way out, and that's the devil. And he'll say, hey, I tell you what, you're afraid, why don't you just come on down here to the enemy's territory? Hey, what you can do is get away from that thing that's got you under pressure. What you can do is you can get away from all that conviction, and you can come down in here into the enemy's territory, and you can get away from that. Hey, and I'll distract you. And I'll say this today, what we have in America today is more distractions than you can shake a stick at. Amen. I'm not talking about necessarily drugs, although those are a great distraction in our country. I'm not talking about meth or necessarily pain pills, which no doubt have invaded the church about as much as anything. What I'm talking about are those things that you may think are wholesome. But what's happened is you've gotten in a tight spot, and now you're looking for a way out, and He's giving you the opportunity to do that. Let me give you some examples. Work and money. Now listen, don't get me wrong. You ought to work hard. The Bible says that. The Bible teaches that. You ought to make money. And if you're making good money, ain't nothing wrong with that. What you got to do is keep it in its place. You understand now, work and money now can come in and say, hey, just a little few more hours on Wednesday night. Hey, what'll happen is you can buy you a bass boat if you'll just work a few more hours on Wednesday night. Or hey, maybe if you'll work a little bit of Sunday morning, you can make double time. And if you do double time, hey, you know what you can do? You can put your kids in that special thing that you want to do. They can play ball and they do whatever. Hey, those things now, that work is, what is it doing? It's moving in on you. It's moving in on your time with church. It's moving in on your prayer time and your Bible study. And it's moving in on your family. Now, you got to be careful about that. You say, well, you know, it takes a lot. You don't want to tell me nothing. I know what it takes. I worked in automotive manufacturing for 20 years, like to work my head off. Successful. You don't have to tell me nothing. I know. But what you got to do is say, hey, this is enough. You know whose place is this taking? It's starting to move in on my priority. My priority has to be Christ. Relationships, young folks, you got to be careful who you hang out with. You can't bring them up where you at. They're going to pull you down. And no doubt that somebody's sitting here this morning saying, well, I love this little girl. I love this little boy. You know, my heart's out to them, and I love them, but they ain't saved, and not going to church, but, you know, they pay plenty of attention to me and all this stuff. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring them up, and I'm going to get them to go to church, and I'm going to change them. No, you ain't. You know what you're going to do? You're going to turn around, and then that thing is going to get you, and then you'll be out of church, and they'll drag you down to where they're going to. That's where it's headed. You got to be careful who you hang out with. My ministry, you understand, if I'm worried more about building houses and getting boys than I am about my relationship with Christ, that's a problem. Man, I got to guard that thing. I got to keep my prayer time, my Bible study has to come number one. It can't come 3 or 4 or 5 just because I'm busy, just because I'm tired. Hey, man, that thing's got to come priority. Hunting and fishing. Oh, boy. Oh, no. Oh, no. Don't say that, brother. Don't say that. Take it back. Don't say it. I know. Listen, hey, you got to be, ain't nothing wrong with it. And don't get me wrong. I'm not legalistic. There's nothing wrong with doing it. You got to get away sometimes. You got to get your mind. You can't go, you drive yourself crazy otherwise. Don't get me wrong, but what we have a tendency to do is to dive into that thing headlong and don't look back, man. Hey, I'll see y'all sometime in January when I've killed all the deer I can kill. Hey, now I'm going to tell you something that's done got warm. The water's warming up. The fish are biting, and I'll see you next week. I know. Sometimes you can feel it. That's okay, though. That's okay. You can do that. Don't get me wrong. What I'm talking about is when that thing starts to invade on your time, and you're MIA from October to January. Your family don't know where you're at. Maybe you're dead. Maybe you're alive. That's when the deer season is in South Carolina, by the way. I know. I'll move on. Ball. Oh, we love to play ball. My boy's going to get a scholarship, brother. Oh, come on now. My girl's going to go to school. I can't pay for all that. I know. Listen, I know it. Don't blame me. Blame God. I promise you I spent time praying this morning. I don't like it no more than you do. Listen, this is what's going to happen. Listen, little Johnny's starting shortstop down there on the ball team. Hey, he's good, man. He's going to get a scholarship. He's going to go down there to the University of Tennessee or even better, Clemson, and he's going to play ball where they got a real ball team. Little Johnny down, he's starting shortstop and plays on them travel ball teams. And he'll go down there and down to Knoxville, and they play all weekend down there. But listen, he'll be home on Sunday. They got a pretty good team, you know. They win on Friday, and they win on Saturday. Championship on Sunday, 10 o'clock. What you do now? Oh, listen, little Johnny's not going to be down there at the ball field on 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. We're going home. And then everybody else in the room says, you can't take Johnny. You can go home all you want, but Johnny's going to have to stay here. Because you know why? He's a starting shortstop. And now what's happened is that thing that's innocent, Johnny loves it, and you like it, and ain't nothing wrong with it. Hey, ain't nothing wrong with doing that thing. But what will happen is that thing will start inching in, and then you'll turn back and look and say, hey, well, not only have I lost my time with Christ, but I'm losing little Johnny. You be careful what you put your kids into and where your family goes to. You know, where you head down, that's where they going. Listen, man, I got to hurry. Listen, let me tell you this. I'll tell you this. I'll talk about me for a little while. It'll make you feel better. Maybe. I love goats. You know, bah. Y'all heard of them before? I do. I mean, I got a little farm I piddle with. And I like it. They're my favorite thing most times. Sometimes I hate them, but most time I like them. Listen, my kids started showing in FFA and 4-H shows all over the place. Y'all got a bunch of them. You got to know what that is. Listen, all them cattle shows, all them sheep shows, all them pig shows, they got goats too the same way. And so what happened is my kids, they got in that thing, they loved it. And I did too, man. We get them up and groom them and clean them up and shine their feet and their horns. And they went in there looking nice, had a bath. Hey, they was primed and ready to go. And we went in there and wore it out. I mean, my kids wore it out in South Carolina, buddy. When we pulled up in the place, they said, "Oh no, well, we might as well go home." And I'm not kidding. They did, buddy. My kids, it was good. Hey, they're gonna practice. They're gonna get everything together and be prepared when we go to the show. Hey, man, we're gonna be ready to go. And so we did that for a little while. And then I said, hey, this is so good. I'm gonna get into the business. So I started buying goats from all over the country, doing artificial insemination, embryo transfer, the whole thing. Hey, man, I love that thing. When I got up in the morning, I was talking about goats, man. It's lunchtime at work. You know what I was doing? I was planning where I was going the next day, and the next weekend, the next month. Whatever I was planning, I wanted the next thing to do, and how to feed them, all that stuff. I was thinking about that. And supper time, my wife was sick and tired of hearing about goats. And I like that thing. You know what it started doing? Started inching in on my time. I said, well, Lord, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out here to Murfreesboro, somewhere way out west. And Murfreesboro's a long way from Spartanburg, by the way. And listen, I think Murfreesboro's a long way from about anywhere, right? So, but listen, that's a good place to go and buy and sell goats. And so we say, hey, on Friday, I'm going to leave out of here. We're going to Murfreesboro, stay all day Saturday. Hey, we'll turn around and come back home. For Saturday night, we'll be up and ready to go come Sunday morning, get back in about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. And listen, when you do that, you're not getting too much done on Sunday morning. You get about 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and you say, well, my kids and my family are going to be in church. Hey, they may be in church, but only by presence only. Hey, you ain't getting too much done there. Most of it's going to be wanting to be going back to bed and go to sleep. That's exactly what we done. Man, that thing started inching in, but I said, I'm pushing back on Sunday. You're not coming to Sunday. We're not going nowhere on Sunday. And Wednesday night neither. Most of the time we're going to be in church. We're not pushing, but we're going to push back on it. It's not going to take advantage of this. You got to be careful. You got to keep your priorities in line. And sometimes what you got to do is you got to put your time with Christ. Number one has to come number one. Amen. And you got to keep it there. What's your real need this morning? And I know I got to hurry. Listen, what's your real need? Salvation, separation from sin, or service. And that's usually, it narrows down to those three. Usually God's got his finger on something in your life and you're not interested in it. And so what you're doing is you're pushing back and saying, I'm getting out of town. I'm afraid. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do whatever God's got on my heart. And what I want to do is I want to do my own thing. And so you run out of town. And so what you've done is you've gone down to Gath. Maybe God's convicting your heart this morning about salvation, and you said, hey, not interested in that. That's too hard. I don't know. I want to have fun for now. And what I want to do is I'll just put that aside for now, and what I'll do is go have fun and then come back. Maybe you don't get a chance to come back. No doubt there's many, like the rich man that's looking up from hell saying, if I only had one more chance. Maybe you don't get to come back. No doubt it probably narrows down to those three needs this morning. What's your real need? You look here in David, and I got to hurry, but listen, you look in 1 Samuel, you see David has gotten into trouble. He's got to act crazy to get out of town. Hey, he's got a little spot. You read through those verses there, and you can see that David realizes he's in trouble. He's in a mess. Listen, he's got to act crazy and dance around, let slobber fall down all on his beard and his clothes. And Achish says to him, hey, whatever he's got, we don't want. Get him out of town. Run him out of here. Don't spill his blood. Don't let him breathe on me. Get him out of here. And you'll read that through verse number 11 through 15 there. Talks about David's plight there in Gath. And he knows he's in trouble. But now David leaves out of Gath. Where's he headed to next? Well, in chapter number 22 and verse number 1 says he's going to Adullam. And I got to move on here. I got to summarize. Listen, look here. Everybody look here. Don't miss this. Gath is right here and Adullam is right here. And to get to Adullam, David has to go from Gath to Adullam. And to get there, he's got to go through the valley of Elah. If you look at that on the map, you'll see it. David's now going from Gath to Adullam. And he's got to go through the valley of Elah to get there. But not, listen to me, in Psalms 56, it talks about what David feels like coming out of Gath. And listen, David understands he should have died down in Gath. He should have never went down into Gath. He knew he messed up. And he feels about as low as a snake's belly in a wagon rut down as he's coming out of there. Listen, he's crying uncontrollably. And it says, God puts all my tears in a bottle. It says that in Psalms 56. It says, what time I'm afraid I will trust in thee. Listen to all those things. Now, David's got all those emotions flowing over him. And no doubt the devil who told him, who convinced him to go down into Gath, now has turned tail on him and said, you should have never went down there. Now God hates you. God's never going to accept you. You're never going to be a king. You're never going to do this. And now David walking by himself back to Adullam. But the good thing is that Adullam is in the land of Judah. You understand, Adullam is in the home. His home for David. Adullam is a place you'll read in 1st and 2nd Samuel where David found a refuge many times. And no doubt Adullam is a place that he should have never left out of, but he's headed back in the right direction. Now, put that on the shelf. We'll come back to it. I promise I won't be long. You remember that date I gave you? September 11, 2004. September 11, 2004, my wife and I had gone to get a load of 100 square bales of coastal Bermuda for our goats. And now we was headed down the interstate. The next day was going to an AI clinic, artificial insemination, down in Georgia, Monroe, Georgia, and I was excited. I mean, I was so excited. I was ready to get back home, get that hay put up, and get washed up and get to bed. So I get up, and then I get down into that, get down to that AI clinic. You know why? Because I want to mingle with all them goat folks. I want to hang out. I want to talk about this thing. I want to see how that goes, how this goes. What are you guys doing? What you feeding? I want to do all that stuff, just like you do when you go to a bass tournament, or you get out there with your buddies on the lake, or you get out there talking about hunting and what you saw and all them lies that you tell. That's the way I was. I was ready to go. We headed down the interstate, and the trailer starts to fish tail. So I sped up, pulled out the slack. The problem was that trailer was not shucking off bales of hay right and left. Getting lighter and going faster. And so, listen, that trailer hits the back of the truck and jackknifes the truck, and the truck hits the guardrail, flips one full time, and lands back on its wheels, and the trailer comes around and lands on the passenger side. I get out and there's dust and it's flying everywhere. Listen, my wife's still in the truck, and I get out. I don't know where you're going. If you've ever been in anything like that, you know it's shocking. You don't know where you're going or what you're doing. And so listen, what I got out and there's stuff everywhere. EMS gets there and says, "Sir, something wrong with your wife." I said, "Well, okay." And just a few minutes later, I mean, it couldn't have been 10 minutes, they landed a helicopter over in the middle of the interstate, shut the whole thing down, all 85, both sides. Take my wife out of that truck with a board, put her in that helicopter, take her to Greenville, the trauma unit. If I get out, I get done with EMS as fast as I get, and we get in the car with my mama. Mama takes me down to Greenville. We get there, the ER doctor meets me at the ER, says, "Sir, I need to talk to you." I said, "Well, sir, first thing we need to do is find my wife. I'll see my wife before I talk to anybody." So we head back through the ER. I get there, and my wife is sitting there with a sheet on with her from her neck down. I said, I saw him make eye contact. He said, "I need to talk to you alone, please." I said, no, you won't talk. Me and my wife, we do everything together. So you can tell me whatever it is she can hear. He said, all right, if that's what you want. He said, sir, what happened was, that trailer had 18-inch rails on it all the way around. I said, that's right. I said, that's what we tied off to. He said, well, that trailer fishtailed, came back around, hit the back of the truck, came back around, and landed on the passenger side. I said, that's right. He said that rail, that 18-inch rail, hit a divot and made a divot right in the cab of the truck on the passenger side. And that divot from the rail of that trailer came right down. No problem in no other part of the cab of the truck. We both had our seatbelts on. That divot in the cab came down, hit your wife right above her head, and mashed her C6 and her C7 together. They're fused now. I said, oh my. He said, your wife right above her neck is broken, and those two vertebrae now are basically one in the spinal cords, making a loop through them. He said, the bad news is your wife is completely injured. I said, I don't understand what that means. He said, sir, what I can tell you today is that your wife will never walk again. Your wife will never be able to be limited use of her hands. She'll never have any function from her mid-chest down. She won't be able to hold things, won't be able to cook, won't be able to clean, won't be able to do the things that she's used to doing with her hands. She'll be limited to a wheelchair for the rest of her life. I said, Doc, that's a mouthful. He said, yes, sir, that's why I wanted to break it to you easy. My wife spent another 3 weeks in ICU, and in and out of, could have died in a minute's notice. We stayed there, never left her. 3 weeks, spent another 3 months after she stabilized, 3 months in Atlanta at the Shepherd Center, wonderful facility there for spinal cord injury folks. 3 months and 3 weeks out of work. I never left her for long, if I left her at all. Her and her mother-in-law, myself and her mother-in-law, her mama, and me stayed with her the whole time in Atlanta. Listen, my wife now has a complete spinal cord injury. She'll never be able to walk again unless God does it. She'll never be able to have function below her mid-chest unless God does it. Listen, what's that got to do with what we're talking about today? We was hauling hay on Saturday. And my hobby, that thing that was wholesome, good for my family, and I had justified in almost every single way you can imagine, now has come full circle, and I'm ready to give up my church time for my hobby. Now listen, don't get me wrong. It's nothing wrong with missing a Sunday every now and again. But listen, what you got to be careful of is those things start moving in. And they start inching in, and they start inching in. And then before you know it, not only are they taking up for Sunday, they're taking up your family time. And not only are you doing that, you're thinking about that more than you are about Christ. And not only that, Wednesday you can forget about because you're going to have fun before you do that. Hey, listen, that thing will start to move in and move in and move in. And before you know it, it's taking over you. You say, brother, I'm glad I ain't got a problem with goats. You might not. Mine's goats. What's yours? And listen, I'm not talking about something that's harmful. I had a lady come up to me, an older lady. She was my mama's age or so, and she came up and she said, brother, I love quilting. I said, well, praise God, because I love quilts. She said, oh, you don't understand what I mean. I said, well, she said, what's happened is now I get up and quilt instead of spending time praying. I said, she got it. She got it. What God did was he convicted her about that, and then she said, I'm going to stop doing that. You know why? Because it's getting between me and my first love. This morning I want to ask you, what's between you and your first love? What's between you and your first love? The second question I want to ask you is, what's it going to take for God to get your attention? You see, before my wife's wreck and we had all that happen, God said, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that, stop doing that. And I said, God, I got it. No problem here. It's good for my family. It's not a big deal. It's okay. And God said, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. And no doubt, listen to me, no doubt there's somebody in here that God is saying, stop doing that. Stop doing that. Stop doing that. What's it going to take? What's it going to take for you to listen? No doubt somebody in here is saying, God's saying, hey, I want your soul. Hey, I want you to be saved today. I want you. Hey, I want you. I want you. I want your heart. And you're saying, I don't know, just doing that right now. What's it going to take for you? Your family? Somebody you love? I implore you today, do like David did and head back toward home. David, in 1 Samuel, early in 1 Samuel, David picked up 5 smooth stones out of the brook. You remember that? He was going to use that in a sling, no doubt. David would never have gotten 5 shots off on Goliath. No way. In 1 Samuel chapter 17 and verse 40, you'll see that. But what God did was God placed 4 smooth stones in David's pocket for what? Why? Now David's headed back from Gath to Adullam, and I'm almost done, I know. And David reaches down in his pocket. Listen, David's as low as he can go. Man, he's in a bad way. He knew he messed up. He knew he shouldn't be. And God has forsaken him. God's not going to... He has forgotten. He's left him. Listen, David messed up and God has forsaken him. And then David looks down in his pocket. He pulls out 4 smooth stones. And listen, he's walking down through there, and he looks up and he realizes, hey, he's headed back toward home, but he's got to go through the valley, the valley of Elah. And now David's got to go through the same place where he defeated Goliath. And you know what God did? God said, hey, listen, boy, hey, I love you. Hey, I'm not forsaking you. Hey, I got enough mercy, and I got enough grace. Hey, and I got enough love for what? And compassion for you. Hey, it ain't going to run out just because you mess up. It's not going to run out. Hey, I've not forsaken you. I'm not going to leave you alone just because you mess up. And today, no doubt this morning, that God's not forsaken you. Hey, you might say, hey, I'm not good enough. I can't take it. I'm not going to be able to do that. And no doubt God's not left you. He's got enough mercy for you. If God would do that for David, He'll do it for you. God didn't do that down in Gath. And just like me, and just like David, me and you are going to have to pick up and head back toward home. You understand? If my wife wasn't in that wheelchair, I wouldn't be standing here today. If God had not have gotten my attention in that way, I'm not interested in the ministry. I told him that many times. I mean, I watched my preacher go through some hell on earth. I'm not signing up for that. No way. God said, all right, I'll put you in a place where you ain't got no choice. But it shouldn't have been that way. And this morning, no doubt, it ain't got to be that way. You understand that you can submit yourself today and say, God, I'm tired of where I've been. I'm going to head back toward home, and whatever you want, that's what I'll do. And you'll be more satisfied than any other place, any other way, anything that you can imagine in your life. And nothing. I'd rather do this than I had anything else in the world. And listen to me. Listen. There's boys out there that are hurting all over this country. And you know what the devil's told them? You're no good. You're no good. God's done throwed you away. He can't use you. There's nothing that you can do to move. Listen, you can do all you want, but you're no good. Hey, you're going to hell, and there's nothing you can do about it. God's given us some suffering. Why? Because we want to be able to go and help those boys. And show them, hey, God's not give up on you. God's not quit on you. What He wants to do is He wants to show you what He can do through your life. And that's the same thing He wants to do with you and I today. What He wants to do is show you what He can do through the life that He's given you. Will you do that today? Will you put all that aside and say, hey, no matter what it takes, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to head toward Christ. Hey, I'm going home. what He'll do is He'll meet you there, just like He did David. Hey, no doubt He's put things in your life that you'll remember when you start heading home. And those things that He's put in your life, He'll bring up and He'll say, hey, I'm so glad you headed back toward home. This is what I'm going to do for you. Will you do that today? That's my plea. Thank you, Pastor.
For the Wallace, you can play softly, brother.